Tonight, President Biden is openly rebuking the International Criminal Court prosecutor for seeking an arrest warrant against both Hamas's and the leader and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for what they say are war crimes.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders. Whatever these warrants may imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that.
That is a notable comment from President Biden there, flatly rejecting accusations that there's a genocide underway in Gaza. I should note, those accusations, which have been made in the International Court of Justice, are separate from today's actions in the International Criminal Court, which seeks to hold individual Hamas and Israeli leaders both accountable. The ICC chief prosecutor, Karim Khan, convened a group of legal experts that also included the human rights attorney, Amal Clooney, to advise on these warrants. He defended this in an exclusive interview with CNN's Christiane Amanpour.
Nobody is above the law. No people by dint of birth or passport, religion, nationality, or the color of their skin have a get-out-of-jail-free card, have a free pass to say, well, the law doesn't apply to us. Every human life, every baby that is killed, whether it's a baby that's cruelly abducted by Hamas and killed, or a baby that's been bombed or killed or has died in incubators because of no electricity or water or food in Gaza, for them, for their families and humanity, it's a tragedy. And this is why we have a court. It's about the equal application of the law.
Here tonight to discuss, John Bolton, the former national security advisor under former President Donald Trump, also the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And Ambassador Bolton, first, let me get your reaction to what we heard from President Biden. He had a pretty blunt rebuke of what we just heard there from the chief prosecutor at the ICC and this idea that they are going to seek these warrants for both the leaders of Hamas, but also the Israeli prime minister and the defense minister.
Well, Biden is half right. What's really illegitimate here is the International Criminal Court itself. It's a fantasy. It's a piece of government, not a whole government, a piece of government floating around in the international ether, unchecked by executive or legislative power, utterly unable to enforce its judgments, and acting in a way that's predictably irresponsible. You know, for many years, people have referred to Israel as the canary in the coal mine on behalf of the United States. This is another example, because what this rogue prosecutor, this utterly unaccountable court is doing here against Israel, they're going to do against us soon enough.
Well, so what do you mean that President Biden is half right? He's basically agreeing with you that both of you agree it's wrong to say that you're going to go after the leaders of Hamas and also the Israeli leaders and kind of create this equivalence between the two of them.
No, I'm saying it's wrong to go after any. This court is not the body to prosecute anybody. The court has also indicted Vladimir Putin in connection with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. That's the wrong way to do it too. You can't. The charge of moral equivalence gives legitimacy to the court, in effect, if they indict really bad guys, they're in favor of it. And the fact is, it's the court itself that's fundamentally flawed. The example is right here in this case. This unaccountable prosecutor is interfering right in the middle of active conflict. Now, in a real government with real power, in our case, the president has both the war power and the prosecution power, and sometimes has to make a trade-off. This utterly unaccountable prosecutor didn't make any trade-off at all. And I think people should ask, does this now make settling the conflict in the Middle East easier or harder? It won't matter to the prosecutor because he'll never be held responsible for it.
Yeah, and obviously you mentioned Putin there, and he's not really traveling a lot, maybe to China or something. But what does this move mean if they do get the judges to sign off on these warrants? And we don't know that they will, but if they do and they're executed, what does that mean for Israel's allies who are parties to this court, and they're technically supposed to arrest them if they travel and they have an ICC warrant?
Well, it should be a wake-up call to them that they've stepped into a very dangerous territory here. And I think this is the sort of thing that that U.S. officials need to worry about in particular. You know, the one silver lining in this cloud, when you look at the self-righteous, grandstanding, publicity-seeking prosecutor there, I think this is the ICC digging its grave in this country. I think I would be happy to predict right here. I don't think the U.S. is going to join the ICC within the lifespan of anybody watching this program, because the targets of this prosecutor are fundamentally irrational. To proceed against a free, law-abiding, democratic society in the way that it did shows it's not tethered to a rule of law itself.
But, Ambassador, when you look at this, there is growing criticism of how Israel has conducted this war. I mean, do you believe that Israel has upheld international law since October 7th?
I haven't heard legitimate charges that it hasn't, and I think there's been a lot of hype propaganda. One very important point, just to prove that,
there's a lot of dead civilians,
the United Nations,
a lot of dead Palestinians.
Well, okay, let's talk about that. The United Nations just cut in half the number of women and children it reports killed in the Gaza conflict. Now, this is the United Nations accepting now the figures of the Hamas Ministry of Health as opposed to the Hamas Information Office. But the fact is that the total number of casualties and the number particularly of women and children killed has been out of whack. The UN, by its shift, concedes that numbers that have been used on women and children have been double what even another part of Hamas says. And I think this is a media problem too, if I may say so. You know, these numbers have come from Hamas entities right from the start of this. And normally what media outlets do when they're given a fact like that, they think it's important enough to report, that's fine. They then go on to say, we have not been able to verify this independently.
Well, Ambassador,
is there any media outlet in the country that has verified those numbers?
We have been deeply skeptical of the numbers because they don't let free and independent journalists go in. CNN has tried on multiple occasions, but even if you are skeptical of that figure, as we've seen even President Biden express skepticism, we do know that a lot of women and children and Palestinian civilians have been killed.
Have they been colluding with Hamas? Do you have any information on that?
Palestinian babies?
Can women collude with Hamas? Can women collude with Hamas?
Little children that we're seeing, Ambassador, who are in hospital. I mean, we've talked to the doctors inside this on this
16,
program
17-year-olds.
But I'm talking about 4-year-olds,
all right,
4-year-olds and 5-year-olds.
Let's take that. Fine. Let's take that. The question in conflict, in urban conflict, which the United States itself has faced as recently as Iraq with Fallujah and Mosul, is Israel targeting legitimate military targets, A, and B, has it taken into account the proportional collateral effects if it goes after those targets? There's no prohibition about civilian casualties. Otherwise, you wouldn't have urban conflict. And the studies that were done of American action in Fallujah and Mosul and other places in Iraq and Afghanistan have shown ratios of civilian to military casualties in the range of 5 to 1. In Gaza, by Hamas's own statistics, the range is 2 to 1. So I just think it's important to understand that when Hamas cynically, barbarically uses its own population as human shields, the morally culpable party here is Hamas.
And no one is defending Hamas. It's a good conversation to have. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for your time tonight.
Glad to do it.